Harp on Sports, the Bar, podcast, media, audio, and radio network. What do we have in store for you on this edition of the show? A little March Madness mayhem. It's not as crazy as people are making it out to be. Yeah, you had some big upsets, but I'm going to show you how the aggregate is consistent with almost any other year, especially now that the Sweet 16 is settled. So we're going to look at that. Also, conference by conference, just like bowl games aren't an indication of how good your conference is. It's all about matchups. The NCAA Tournament's one of these things where if you have success in it as a conference, people will point about how star-spangled awesome your conference is. Well, right now, whose star is shining the brightest? Now, look, we have 5 mid-majors out of the Sweet 16? That's about where we are normally. Going to look at that. Also, 2 coaches that a little heat in their seat. Why it's not time to overreact or panic yet, but it is getting warm. It is getting warm, getting a little toasty. And also the World Baseball Classic claims another. This thing, I want to care about it. It's hard to believe, but this is the, 17th year that this has existed. Now, I know it's on a rotational basis, not every year, but this thing's been around for 2 decades. And it works. As angry and as upset as people are, it works. It just doesn't work for the United States. Yeah. So we're going to look at that as well. Again, Harp on Sports, the Bar, podcast, media, audio, radio network. Follow, share, like, subscribe at Harp on Sports Twitter, at Harp on Sports Instagram, Harp on Sports Facebook page, Harp on Sports the YouTube channel. Auditory route, you want to listen to us, Harp on Sports, the Bar, courtesy of Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course, Buzzsprout. You can check us out at harponsports.com. All right. The NCAA Tournament. We're down to 16. And what do we know about those 16? Just like almost every other year, about 75% of the teams fall on those top 5 seeding lines. Now, when you get to this point, I don't think there's that much of a difference between a 5 or a 4 when you get to the Sweet 16. But I went through and looked at her here. What do we have? We have 2 1s, 2 2s, 3 3s, 2 4s, 2 5s. 11 of your 16. 11 of your 16 are from those top seeding ranks. So again, it's the aggregate, about 75% of the tournament, not necessarily chalk, but about 3/4. That's why this thing works. The NCAA tournament works. Why does it work? Because it's the illusion that these small guys are everywhere and winning constantly, and they're not. We just make more of a big deal out of it. We just do. We make more of a big deal out of it. Think about the teams that have advanced that we haven't made a big. Texas advances. Xavier advances. Fairleigh Dickinson wins 1 game. Everybody loses their mind. Arkansas wins. They knock off top-seeded Kansas. Everybody goes crazy. Tennessee's right where they should be, aren't they? They're a 4 seed. They're in the Sweet 16. They're 5 seed right there. So, again, it's one of these things that as you watch this and as you consume it, I'll pop my ear there for a second. Everybody loses their mind about all the upsets. It's chaos. This thing's wide open. Almost 75%, 3/4 of the team should be where they are. Now, I know there's no Duke. We knew there was going to be no North Carolina. There's no Kansas. There's no Kentucky. Okay. There's a UCLA. There is. And I went through and looked at this. And it's not the perfect blue blood bracket, but you could have an Alabama, Michigan State, Xavier, UCLA when it's all said and done. Is it perfect? No. I mean, the one year we got Carolina, Kansas, UCLA, and Memphis? That 15 years ago? And there are years that we had Villanova, North Carolina, Gonzaga. Yeah, you've gotten those big boys in there. You have. You've gotten those big boys in there. But it's also, it's not heinous. Your heinous options are what? Princeton, FAU, Miami, Arkansas, that would be your nightmare. Looking at best case scenario, it'd be Alabama, Michigan State, Xavier, and UCLA. That's your best case scenario at this point. It is. And that would be pretty solid. That would be pretty good. Now, your chances of getting Princeton, FAU, Miami, and Arkansas aren't. Miami's a good basketball team. It just, what type of draw are they going to be at this point? So again, your highest seeding that's available to everybody is what? At this point. Alabama as a 1. We mentioned Xavier sitting there as a 3. Could be in this thing. UCLA is a 2. So again, I'm fascinated to see what the aggregate is when you add up the final 4 teams. Usually it's right around 10. Sometimes it gets bigger than that. You had Butler in there 1 year as an 8. You had what? George Mason 1 year in there as an 11. You had UConn as a 5. Kentucky as a 2 or whatever. I was trying to think, that's a decade ago, right? Close to a decade ago. So I look at all these and how all these things lay themselves out in this perfect vacuum. And again, it's there have been some upsets. Purdue getting knocked off was gigantic. But the way this lays itself out right now, if it ends up being Michigan State over Purdue, Michigan State, we look at Michigan State, we look at Sparty, and you may sit there and say, well, it's a 1 as opposed to a 7. Michigan State's a bigger draw than Purdue in the Final Four. Which leads me to my next point. This is why the NCAA tournament works. It gives somebody everything that they want. The favorites get through. 25% of the time, the little guy peeks its head around the corner. And what? In the Sweet 16, you've got yourself what? You've got yourself Princeton. You've got yourself FAU. Those little guys that everybody's going to root for. You got Creighton, although Creighton was a top 25 team all year. You've got those type of teams that everybody's like, yes, look at these. We got our little guys. Well, okay. I mean, your 8 seeds. You got Arkansas in there. I mean, how big of a shocker are some of these teams? Conference-wise, the SEC. I mean, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Alabama. Tennessee was, of the top 5 seeds, everybody thought they were the most vulnerable. And they make their way through. Alabama's look strong. Alabama's the one team in the tournament. If they play to their potential, they're going to win it. They're the only team that's like that. If Alabama plays to their potential and Xavier plays to their potential and UCLA plays to their potential, Alabama wins it. Now, will they have their hands full with San Diego State? Yeah, they will. Should they win this thing? Yeah, they should. Alabama should go to the Final Four. Especially with all the other chaos that when you have Princeton down there, Princeton and Creighton, the fact that one of those teams is going to be in the Elite Eight is pretty cool. But Princeton and Alabama, it'll be fascinating if we get that. So again, the tournament's giving everybody what they wanted. You get enough upsets, but when it's all said and done, you could have a number 1 versus what? A 1 versus a 4, and a 3 versus or you have a 1 versus a 4, and a 3 and a 1 versus a 2. You could have 1-4, 1-2. If Houston, everybody forgets about Houston. I even forgot about him talking about this. You could have Houston, UCLA, which is a 1-2, and then a 1 with Alabama, right? And then Tennessee. Well, that'd get everybody all fired up, right? 2 SEC teams in the Final Four in basketball. Big 12 had a great year. Kansas took it on the chin. Baylor, faded away. And over the weekend, the Big 12, look, it's a solid conference. Doesn't mean it's a bad conference. These teams started to get picked off. Matchups. Now, Kansas State punches through. Still a good conference. Just didn't do well in the tournament. I mean, it's a bad year. So there you go. Coaching-wise, I thought these things were just interesting in terms of discussion. That, Matt Painter, The last 3 years, they've lost to a 14, a 15, and a 16. That's saying something. 14, 15, 16 in the first round. Oh boy. He's a good basketball coach. He's a very good basketball coach. But you can't afford another one of those. You can't. If you're Matt Painter, if you end up being a 4 seed and you lose to a 13, or you end up being a 5 seed and you lose to a 12, I don't know if you survive another one. I don't. And I went through and looked and tried to give a little bit of a comparison for somebody else, and that's John Calipari. And, sometimes you look around and you've had success. And I know, Purdue entered that stretch there for a while that they just, when Matt Painter's been there, it's hard to believe he's been there, 16, 17 years? Close to it. Took over for Gene Cady, and he's been there ever since. And I know that he's won Big Ten titles. He just hasn't had success in the tournament. Now, I turn back the clock to 2019. Purdue went to the Elite Eight, lost to Virginia. What do you know? Another team that gets snake bitten in the first round. So they lose to Virginia in overtime. It was a great game. Virginia hits a big shot to force overtime. Virginia goes on to win the national championship. That year, Kentucky also went to the Sweet 16 with John Calipari. Since then, Purdue hasn't won a tournament game, and Kentucky's won one. Now, COVID wiped out 2019. I get it. Or 2020, excuse me. COVID wiped out 2020. But that's 3 tournaments now. Kentucky's done what? This year, 1-1. But 1-3. Kentucky's 1-3 in the last 3 tournaments. Purdue is 0-3. So Kentucky and Purdue are combined 1-6 the last 3 tournaments. Whew. And that's 1-6 when you are good seeds. Purdue's been a 3, a 2, and a 1. They've gotten better, but still have gotten bounced. Kentucky got bounced as a 2, right? A 6, they weren't supposed to beat Kansas State. I know they're favored, but seeding wise, Kansas State's a better basketball team this year. That'll be interesting to see what happens with Calipari as well. He did win a game this year. If he'd have got bounced in the first round this year, now there's more pressure on Calipari than Painter. But these are 2 guys also, if they lose their job, they'd be hired tomorrow. How long would it take Notre Dame to hire Matt Painter or John Calipari? How long would it take Georgetown to hire John Calipari or Matt Painter? 2 seconds. But these are instances where, okay, you didn't work out here, well, we'll take you here. Retread's the harsh word, but there are coaches that aren't successful or successful in one place and they go someplace else and okay, not working out in here more, got to go somewhere else. Look at Rick Barnes. Look at Rick Barnes at 10. Rick Barnes was a decent coach at Clemson, went to Texas, was good at Texas, just couldn't win a championship, and he goes to Tennessee, and people are complaining about, I don't know if Barnes is good. Time to get rid of him. I don't know if he's good enough. He can't take us to the next level. Okay, got you Sweet 16 again. What do you want him to do? And I bring up a guy going into this year's tournament. I wrote it down. He was 6-6 his last 12 NCAA tournament games going into this year's tournament. This year he's 2-0. It's Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo was 6-6 in his last 12 NCAA tournament games. 6-6. One Final Four. Had gotten bounced since 2015. I'll only go to one Final Four, right? Since 2015, one Final Four. And he was 6-6 in his last 12 NCAA tournament games. Now, Tom Izzo wins a couple games this year. Mr. March. Oh, we're back to that, huh? It's amazing how 1 year can fix everything. Rick Barnes is one of those examples at Tennessee. Prime for an upset in the first round. I picked him to get beat. They looked terrible. They looked awful the last 3-4 weeks of the year. They get in the tournament, they flip a switch. They suffocate Duke. And all of a sudden, they're sitting there licking their chops, aren't they? They find themselves in a position, they do a little damage here. Tennessee go to the Final Four? Are they the favorite in that bracket now? I mean, if Tennessee plays Michigan State, who are you picking? Tom Izzo and Rick Barnes aren't strangers. I mean, they hooked up in a great game with Michigan State and Texas one year in the Elite Eight. They met in the tournament before. I just think these things start to lay themselves out as fascinating angles. But Rick Barnes was a guy that going into this year's tournament, like, oh my God. Tom Izzo, Mr. March again. Well, interesting. He was 6-6 in his last 12 tournament games. It's amazing how quickly this works. Look, Purdue next year with Matt Painter could come out and go to the Final Four. Would it surprise me? Not really. He's a good basketball coach. So, again, and what you don't want, you start pushing coaches out, and that's just that you have a coach that's good that you know that can win it. Virginia could have panicked and fired Tony Bennett, right? They could have, but they win a national championship. Now they lose a couple in the first round. It's like, oh, what do we? But you've won a championship. If he doesn't win that championship, who knows? But there's coaches that have struggled. Bill Self struggled forever. Wins a title. Struggles 4 or 5, struggles. He gets bounced early, a couple of years there at Kansas, wins a championship, struggles again for about 5 or 6 years. Like, oh, what do we do? Then he wins another title, and now he, has a little bit of an illness. But so I'm interested to see it again. I think it's more. They know Calipari, $60 million, something like that. And who are you going to replace him with? That's the other thing too. We're going to get rid of Johnny Calipari and hire who? Well, a lot of people want it. Well, find me somebody that you think is going to come in there and flip that around and be successful. And everybody loves the hot flash in the pan. Hire the coach from Princeton. Oh, okay. All right. Who are you going to hire? Tough to be successful. It is. It's tough to be up there and tough to be good. Even if I sat there and told you, do you think Tom Izzo's been successful the last 15 years? You'd say yes. He's played in a couple national championship games, hasn't won them. You'd say yes, wouldn't you? Yeah. Well, okay. Now, look, I mean, could you, if you're Kentucky, shove Calipari out and offer the world to Jay Wright? Yeah. Pay him $10, $12 million a year? I guess you could do that. But there you go. All right, little NCAA tournament. Heavy on the NCAA tournament? It should be, because that's the big story right now. Something else that's taking place, the World Baseball Classic. And this is one of these things that other countries, Cuba, I don't know if Canada, you had Great Britain in there. But it's one of these things that Americans, we love telling everybody how awesome America is, how much we love America. Then we don't support our teams. Not like other countries. There's national pride when it comes to the national team. Well, we care more about pro sports. Yes, because in England and Spain, they don't care about Real Madrid or Manchester United. Knock it off. They care about their teams too. And for a country that walks around with the American flag, rubbing it in everybody's face as much as possible, you'd think that we'd support our national teams, but we just don't. We don't. Openly rooting against American athletes in the last Olympics. Rooting against Team USA basketball. Yeah. Rooting against them. Which I don't get. Now, look, if Team USA loses to a different country or to a different team, you'd think that as much as we walk around talking about how great we are and how the rest of the world sucks and how America's the greatest country in the world, you'd think you'd support Team USA more, but people just don't. Which leads to this, because people, I see this, where we got to get rid of the World Baseball Classic. Nobody cares. No, you don't care. Americans don't care. Cuba loves it. Mexico... You don't think they enjoyed beating our brains in? Now, look, there are some things in here, I guess, that I get. Edwin Diaz, Jose Altuve, yeah, these injuries, I get it. I get it. And the World Baseball Classic is a little bit like preseason NFL. You could say you could avoid it. Yeah, you could. And Altuve's going to be out now. He's going to miss a month. Do you think when he's healthy in August, anybody's going to care? Now, Edwin Diaz matters. You bet. And then you had stories like Mookie Betts telling, his manager, Who cares? Let us play no matter how banged up everybody is. We got to win this. We got to win this. And, major league franchises that have doled out $400 million in guaranteed contracts are just white knuckling their steering wheel thinking about it. Again, am I a gigantic fan of the World Baseball Classic? No, I've watched probably, especially with the NCAA Tournament, I probably watched 16 to 18 innings of it. Team USA in both instances. It's just not our thing. We love telling everybody how great we are. We just don't enjoy supporting our national teams. Now, we do a little bit when it comes to women's soccer, but even people turned on them too. We just don't support them. Not like other countries. Try to tell everybody how great we are, but just don't consume it. Don't. So, again, they've got to get rid of the World Baseball Classic. Other countries love it just because our country doesn't. It's funny, you want to get rid of these sports in the Olympics. Why? This happens too, right? Like, let's get rid of this sport in the Olympics. Why? Or we got rid of softball and baseball in the Olympics. Other countries love it. This has happened. It's a shame. Now, I know it's come back in the last go around. We added golf to the Olympics, and then there's a hang up on golf, and now golf's in the Olympics. How big of a deal? I think golf's perfect for the Olympics. Perfect. So the World Baseball Classic needs to go away. Americans just don't have pride for Team USA. Just don't. Harp On Sports, the Bar, podcast, media, audio, radio network. Follow, share, like, subscribe at Harp On Sports, Twitter, at Harp On Sports, Instagram. Of course, Harp On Sports. Auditory Route, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Harp On Sports, the YouTube channel, Harp On Sports, the Facebook page, and of course, harponsports.com. Remember, stay clean, stay focused, stay strong. Frankenstein. Have fun with your friends.